Hi, and welcome to ADHD and Career. So, in this module, we're going to be talking about where to start when setting realistic goals and talking about transitions specifically. Transitions can be very difficult for people with ADHD. We sometimes have a hard time focusing on what we need to do long term. Sometimes we're distracted by something new, or sometimes we call it shiny. And then other times we have challenges with transitions that are small, like maybe seemingly small, like going from being in bed to getting up and getting ready for the day. But today we're going to specifically talk about seasonal transitions, going from summer to fall, for instance. That's the season that we're in. So that's the example we're going to use. But first, I'm Christina, and I am an ADHD coach and also a corporate dropout. And my passion in life is really to be an advocate for neurodivergent people, specifically with ADHD. I myself have ADHD and dyslexia. So, first of all, how do transitions work when you are ADHD? Transitions are hard, like I said. And so we thrive in routine, and with ADHD, we get bored with it sometimes. So, where do you start when setting up new transitions? The first thing to do is think about what type of transition you're going through. You can start identifying with the life domains, which is what we're going to start off with in a minute. But here are some examples of different types of transitions within the context of domains and main areas of life. So the first one is seasonal. So we've got seasons that go from summer to fall, summer to fall, or spring to summer. And the reason why seasonal changes are important is because sometimes you have different relationships with seasons. So some people really enjoy spring and fall, where they spend lots of time outside. They enjoy the cooler, not too hot weather. And then some people absolutely adore summer. Maybe they live in an area where summer is the time of year where it is not as rainy, not as wet, and they enjoy spending time outside in the beautiful weather. And what you need to do is remember that sometimes you have different types of routines in the winter months that you do versus in the summer months. It could impact time changes, it could be impacted by weather. Either way, seasonal transitions are important to acknowledge, and giving yourself more time to spend outside or identifying that you are going to be spending more time inside in the winter is important, because your routines and your transitions from maybe home to work could be different. The next thing, when we think about diving deeper into life domains when it comes to transition. So when you identify like the type of transition, you could also identify the different life domain that it impacts. It's important to take those things into account because emotions can run high, your habits can be impacted, and it's helpful to give yourself space to experience the friction points that come up. And so, say, for example, the one here is that you're going to have a financial transition. You have a new job, better pay. Awesome. That's what we like to hear. And you want to pay off student loans. So you go through a financial transition where you're getting more pay, and at the same time, you're paying off debt. So that's going to impact other areas of your life where you might be cutting up your spending buckets in your budget. So this impacts your different habits that you have. Maybe you go from eating out 4 days a week to two. Maybe you cut off any alcohol, any type outside of your home because it is very expensive. So that's something where that is a transition that isn't financial, but might also impact relationships, might also impact your social or leisure. If you have a very healthy, say, have fun fund. I have a just for fun fund that I fund every month. It varies based on my income. And you know what? There might be situations where I'm wanting to pay off a debt and my just for fun fund goes from $200 to $50. That's a big shift. And so those transitions are important to account for when you are going through changes in season. It's important to think about all the different life domains that transition can impact, because you can start feeling how that transition is going to impact you directly. And so you can ask yourself those types of questions where you are thinking through what that transition could look like and what domains are impacted. Okay, so Moving to realistic goals. So we've got transitions, and sometimes what happens is that in seasonal transitions, especially right now, we're currently in summer going into fall, we revisit our goals. Maybe we took the summer off, or maybe we didn't. And either way, reviewing your goals regularly, at least quarterly, at least, is helpful. So, how do you set a realistic goal? What does that even mean? The first thing we need to think about is reminding ourselves that awareness of your strengths is the number one thing. What are your strengths? What strengths would you like to grow? What areas of opportunity do you have? It's not just about growth in areas where you're lacking, right? It's also identifying the spaces where you thrive, because setting goals in areas where you thrive can really help us nurture and develop those strengths, and honestly can give us confidence, especially when it comes to our rejection sensitivity dysphoria. So, from there, what I encourage you to do is also have some gratitude. Giving yourself time to have a gratitude practice will help with mindset and what you want to do now and not what you are lacking. So, that also aligns with a strength based goal setting philosophy. And so, you're not just focused on what you are lacking. From there, really thinking about, and this is high level, goal setting in an ADHD oriented way, following my smarter goal setting framework, identifying the ADHD key motivators, and taking your first three action steps. So I'm going to break that up on a high level. The smarter framework is accessible in the membership. And so that is specific, measurable, actionable, relevant, time bound, excited. So, like, you're excited about it. And the R is reward. So, what you're going to give yourself at particular milestones in your goal, as well as at the end. It doesn't have to be a monetary, like I'm giving myself $1,000 once I've saved 100,000. That would be an amazing goal. However, it could also be the gift of time. So, like, when you hit a certain goal, maybe you give yourself a day off. Maybe you give yourself a day of fun at home. There's lots of different ways that you can give yourself that space and that type of reward. Key motivators are, this is sometimes what people confuse with rewards. Key motivators are all about your emotional why you're doing your goal, what you're going to achieve out of it. So if you are looking to learn a particular system at work, and that is one of your main goals over the next 3 months, maybe your key motivator is finally getting to a place where you have been wanting to get in your development plan. And that makes you feel really good and solid in your career. And that's something that you have been encouraged to do. So, a key motivator might be finishing the training so you can go into the next step training for manager or something like that. So, your why is really to continue on with your career. And then the first three action steps, these are going to be as small as you can possibly make them, like tiny, tiny, tiny action steps. Accountability is really something to consider and to take into consideration, I should say, when you are talking about setting realistic goals. This is really where you're going to need to know your community and know your people. You want to communicate with somebody that you trust and somebody that will hold you accountable and support you. So sometimes we should not be talking about our goals with just anyone and everyone, because somebody might look at us and say, absolutely not. I can't believe you think you should be doing that. Back away from those people. Back away, because you're going to want to be with somebody who's supportive of you, who's thoughtful for you, and who really knows you and cares about you and loves you all the time. So if you have somebody like that in your life, communicate what your goals are and ask them if they'll help keep you accountable. That added pressure really does help our ADHD brain when we get bored, because it's really giving you urgency, which is one of the ways our ADHD brain is activated, and it gives you competition, sometimes even with yourself. Next thing is really all about personal care. So energy management, we talk about that in another training, as well as getting proper sleep. And that can be very difficult for ADHDers. That's why energy management is so important. Learning how your energy hot peaks and valleys. With our ADHD, we have high days, we have low days, and giving ourselves space to know what sleep looks like for us. And then also we have sustainable, nutritious eating habits. I don't subscribe to the healthy, unhealthy. I think sometimes accessibility needs to be considered when it comes to eating. And so sometimes having a tuna packet for lunch 3 days straight, if that's what you can handle, that's what you eat. And that is okay. So, really thinking about ways that you can give yourself the space to be sustainable and have nutritious eating habits. So, all that said, really understanding and taking a step back and learning how to set realistic goals while you're going through transitions, those two things are really what we wanted to cover today. So at the end of the day, the short order is that for you to be able to set realistic goals, it's important for you to also recognize the transition type of transition you're going to have and what other life domains it could impact, and be open to working through friction points that you might experience. And then setting realistic goals is really about digging a little bit deeper, asking what your key motivators are, and setting up your goals in the smarter framework so that you vet the goals before you really start diving in.